Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon for this special lecture, and I will keep this lecture quite brief because I know you have a lot of work and assignments to do as our semester begins to draw to a close. But today, for this special lecture, the topic I chose is to think about studying abroad your junior year, right? Your third year at the university. And you may say, well, I'm just a freshman and that's so far from now. But I think, it's very important to plan early in your life and start thinking about these big decisions, because what I want to communicate to all of you this afternoon is that, in my view, studying abroad is a decision that can completely transform your life, right? Completely change your life, lead your life in a totally new direction. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about just a little bit this afternoon. So I'd like you to turn your attention to this photograph, and I don't know if you know, Nugu Saram, right? Who is this guy? You probably don't recognize me, but yes, this is actually me when I was a university student, and I always keep this picture in my office, and many times students, when they visit me in my office, which I hope all of you will do when we can gather back on campus again in the future, when they see this photograph, they say, "Professor, what happened to you?" Right? From then and now is a quite big change, especially here. They always ask what happened to you, and I say, life happened, right? It happens to everybody. But anyway, this photograph was taken in the early 1990s, and the location of the picture is Kobe, Japan. And this is me with my Japanese classmates. Very interestingly, this young man, his name is Shinichi, and he is actually a teacher of English in a private school in Kobe. He still lives here in Kobe. And so I'm proud to say that he and I both are working as English teachers now. And this, if you visit Kobe someday, there is a cable car that goes to the top of Mount Roko-san. It's a beautiful area to visit and go sightseeing. And looking at this picture brings back lots of wonderful memories. But what I want to say that's really quite interesting is I studied. I went from my little university in Texas, where I studied. I went from there all the way to Japan. This was, in my case, it was actually my senior year, my fourth year, not my third year, like it would be for you guys. And I went to a university called Kobe Gakuin University, which is located in Akashi, which is just outside of Kobe. And the reason this is quite significant, and I think very kind of remarkable, is one of the sister universities that our university has is with this same Kobe Gakuin University. So we have students from Sangmyang now that go to Kobe Gakuin University to study Japanese. And we have not so many, but we have a few students from Kobe Gakuin that come here to study alongside with you guys as exchange students. So it really makes me incredibly happy and pleased that this same university where I studied so long ago, now the university where I'm working and teaching still has a connection that really is very special for me and makes me really, really happy. So, you may be wondering, why did you make that decision? How did it affect you? How did it influence your life? And my decision to go here for the exchange program had a very, very big, significant impact on me. It is probably the reason why I am standing here giving you this lecture today. Because had I not gone to Kobe Gakuen and fallen in love with Japanese culture and Asian culture, then I very likely, when I had graduated, I probably would have stayed in the United States and pursued something related to history. That's my other very big passion. I really love history. And I probably, had I not gone on this program, I probably would have stayed in America and gotten a job related, probably some job related to American history. But because I took this path, it led me in a direction of when I graduated from my school in Texas, I wanted to go back to Asia, right? And so that's why I began to look for jobs, and I found a job working as an assistant language teacher, what they called an ALT, in the Japanese public schools. And I taught junior high school for 3 years as an assistant language teacher. I also visited many local elementary schools. I didn't teach that many. It was more like just a cultural presentation about America that I did for the elementary school kids. But I taught junior high school at 3 different schools in Japan for 3 years. And then I ended up, even after I finished that job, staying in Japan for 4 more years, for a total of 7 years in Japan. And then eventually I went to graduate school, and then graduate school at University of Hawaii, and then that led me, that connection, which was another sister relationship with Sangmyang, the University of Hawaii, that led me to working here. So it all really kind of goes back to this picture of, again, why I'm standing here today. So, I speak to you today from my own experience that studying abroad can be a very, very transformative, big decision that can really, take your life in a very different direction than you may have expected. All right, so you're thinking, that's good, but where? Where should I study? And I'm proud to say at Sangmyang, we have a lot of options for you. Our university has worked very hard over the years to develop more and more universities that our students can go to. And first of all, I'll mention one that is very popular. That is in Canada, Vancouver Island University. Canada, of course, is extremely beautiful, so students who are very interested in the outdoors, in nature, this campus, the campus itself is extremely beautiful, and I've talked to many students who had a very good experience at Vancouver Island University. So Vancouver in Canada could be one option for you guys. And before I go any further, let me tell you, if you are interested in what I'm talking about, what I would recommend when school reopens, visit the GLC. Do you remember what that stands for, GLC? Somebody talked about this, and they went there on the virtual tour that they did for you guys. And GLC stands for the Global Language Center. And in that center, there is a young lady. Her name is An Ji-hee. She was one of my former students from our department. She is now working in that center. And if you visit Ji-hee, she will let's see if we can get the picture back. There we go. She will give you counseling about these various universities. Some of them I'm going to talk about. But she will go into detail with you about the various programs that our university offers. So when the opportunity is available and you can come back to campus, I strongly recommend that you visit the GLC, set up an appointment with An Ji-hee, and let her explain and talk about the different options that are available. So I want to point that out. There is a wall in that Global Center that has a list of all the various universities in the world that we are connected with. And then if you have a question about one of them, then Ji-hee can help you with your questions. Okay, so I already mentioned one of the options would be in Vancouver in Canada. And a second option, and this would probably be the most prestigious school if you really care about name value, very famous, well-known schools. We also have a connection, and some of you, Sombe, from our department have gone there. We have a connection in England. As I've mentioned to you guys in my lecture, I am an Anglophile. Remember what that means? A lover of England, a lover of British culture. And as an Anglophile, I personally would be very tempted by this one. We have a connection with Manchester University. And Manchester is in the, I believe, top 10 list of best universities in the UK. It's a very prestigious school, right up there along with schools like Oxford and Cambridge, St Andrews University in Scotland, and Manchester is one of the best schools in the United Kingdom. We have a connection there. It could be possible for you to study there as an exchange student. So that is another option to think about. Okay, so we've talked about one option being Canada, one option being the UK. Another option, of course, is my country, the US, and even more specifically than that, my home state of Texas. There are two schools that we have a sister relationship with that are located in Texas. One of them is in a very big city, San Antonio, and so that would be a very exciting place to study, a very big city, and interestingly, it has a very large Hispanic population. So not only would you be learning English and practicing your English, if you were interested in Spanish and learning a bit of Spanish while you were on your study abroad, San Antonio would, our sister school in San Antonio would also be a very good option. Spanish, you know, is another global language. It's spoken in something like 32 countries in the world. And so mastering Spanish would also be extremely valuable. So I think that is another option which I would recommend to you guys. Alternatively, in Texas, much closer to my hometown, there is San Angelo University. This would be more in the countryside, much smaller, more white, fewer Hispanics. So it would be a very different experience from studying in San Antonio. But, you know, it would offer you a chance to study in a smaller environment with fewer distractions, right? If you're studying in a big city like Seoul or San Antonio, there are all kinds of fun things to do, and right, many distractions. But if you're in a smaller university town like San Angelo, it would be a much quieter, more peaceful experience. Also, you would only be about 2 hours from my hometown of Fort Worth, And I've actually hosted Sangmyang students during the summer. They were studying at San Angelo. They came a little bit early, and then some of them actually have visited me in my hometown during their break before the semester began. So, which was really fun experience for me to be able to welcome Sangmyang students in my home state of Texas. So again, two options in Texas, one in a big city, one in the countryside. I will say one cautionary note, one kind of warning about San Angelo University that I mentioned. That school has a lot of Korean exchange students. I heard over 200. So for that reason, I would maybe think twice. Because if you end up there and you're surrounded by lots of Korean classmates, again, it may be hard for you to focus on studying English and practicing English because you'll be making lots of new Korean friends, which is wonderful, but you can do that here in Seoul at our school. You don't need to go all the way to another country and then surround yourselves with Korean friends. That's kind of, as we talk about studying abroad, you've got to keep that in mind. If you're going to do this, you're going to spend the investment of both money and time to learn in another country. You need to be really focused and willing to make some sacrifices. And I think, maybe having fewer Korean friends around you and trying to make new friends from the host country, I would strongly advise you to do that. So this is the kind of advice that, before you make your decision to study abroad, you need to counsel with me, you need to counsel with An Ji-hee and the Global Center, and really get as much information as you can about that school, about that city, and think very carefully which school is going to be the right match, for you and your goals. All right, so also in the U.S., we have, there's a school in Missouri, Central Missouri University. There's also a school in Kentucky. Both of these schools are rather countryside, not big cities. So if that's appealing to you, studying in a smaller environment, those schools in Kentucky or Missouri could be good options. We also have a school in Delaware State University, and several of our Sangmyang students have gone there. And what's interesting about this school is it is predominantly African American. So if you are wanting to learn something about diversity, it could be a really amazing opportunity to go to a school where the majority of your classmates, not only are they foreigners, but they're not even white foreigners like me that you're kind of used to, but African Americans, right? And then you could learn about a whole new culture in the United States. And because the African American culture is very rich, diverse, they have a different saturi, a different dialect, a different way of speaking, a different variety of the English language. All of these things, if you learn that from this exchange program, then when you become teachers here in Korea, you'll have that cultural knowledge about being with diverse people that you can share with your students. And, I strongly believe that in the future of Korean education, it's going to be more and more multicultural, right? You're going to have students from more diverse cultural backgrounds. So if you have lived and experienced being in that kind of diverse environment, I think that's going to be very helpful for giving you an open mind to be a great teacher that's welcoming and accepting to your future multicultural students. So again, Delaware State could be a very interesting option because of your exposure to African American culture. Again, I already mentioned San Antonio in Texas. You would have a similar experience with a lot of Hispanic students, so you'd also get a lot of diversity there. So again, if you're looking for diversity as part of your experience, then these could be really good options for you. Let's see. There is one other school I'd like to talk about. It is Towson, Towson, Towson de Hakyo, and it is in Baltimore, Maryland. And you may not know a lot about Baltimore, but the interesting thing about it, it is very near to Washington, D.C., right? The District of Columbia, America's capital city. And so if you study at Towson, then you would be not very far from Washington. Washington, D.C. is a wonderful city to visit, full of museums, which are free. The Smithsonian museums, there's no charge for admission, so you'd have access to all those wonderful museums, all the monuments, all the history, all the sightseeing. You could easily go there on a weekend from Towson. Also, Baltimore is not that far from New York City. I know a lot of Korean students, it's kind of a dream to get to spend time in New York. Right, the Big Apple, and young people love to go there. It's full of young people from all over the world, so it's a very exciting city to be in. So if you're on at Towson University, you're on the east coast of America, not so far from Washington, not so far from New York City, and that can also be a very attractive option for a lot of students. So I promised you guys this would not be too long because, again, I know you have lots of work and assignments, but what I want you, again, to take from this lecture is just consider this as food for thought, right? I want you, even though you're freshmen, to start thinking about your future, right? And planning for your future. And if you're thinking, well, maybe, just maybe, I think being an exchange student might be a really good experience for me. In that case, then my advice is start planning now. Start preparing now. And of course, another thing to be preparing for is your language skills, right? Especially your speaking skills. Because if you're going to study abroad in Canada, England, the United States, any of these places, the more comfortable you are with English before you go there, the easier the experience is going to be, and the more you're going to be able to take advantage of that experience, right? If you are very, very shy of speaking, of course you can still go there, and you'll learn a lot, absolutely, but you're not going to be able to achieve maybe quite as much, because you will have to spend so much time just working kind of on basic building your language skill. So again, start practicing your speaking skills now as freshmen, so that by the time you're a junior, right, and you've built up those skills, you'll be much more confident and in a much better position to take full advantage of being a study abroad student. Okay, so I've said a lot. Again, as you start planning and start preparing and start thinking about this, please come and visit me for counseling. I'm happy to talk to you about any of these schools, especially the two schools in Texas that I know a lot about, but I also know a bit about some of the others, because for many years I have heard from my students who've come back from these schools, I've heard wonderful things. And so I have I do have some knowledge about even schools like Towson or Delaware State that I've never personally been to. And also, more importantly, make sure to schedule an appointment with An Ji-hee in the Global Language Center and go there for counseling, go there for some information, tell her that Mr. Denny sent you, and I know that you will learn a lot from counseling with her. So, thank you for listening. I hope this has been helpful, and if you have any questions about it, you guys know how to contact me on eCampus or email, and I will gladly try to answer any questions that you might have. And Please continue to take care of yourselves. Remember, health is most important. Kongang haseo. And please enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for listening.